Hi. Kerrie Stillman, Commission on Ethics. I'm pleased to be here. Love being here at the beach. Love seeing all of you, but I know you're not here to see me. You're here because it's now required, and that's okay. We're going to spend the next hour and 45 minutes talking about ethics. I encourage you to interrupt me and ask questions. I will do my best to answer them up here. If I'm not able to answer them, we can get together afterwards. I'll take your card. I'll go back to the office where I have all of my tricks and backup attorneys who can help me sort through it and get you an answer sometime next week. But please interrupt me with any questions you might have, except for Sunshine and Public Records Act. You guys are in for a treat because Pat's going to handle those later. You'll see she passed around a things to know sheet. These are kind of our favorite tips in the office for the different laws that you're subject to. So if you throw everything else in the trash bin, please maybe keep this handy. And I joked with Herb, my work is really done because he just comes up and scares us all to death, doesn't he? He does such a good job and talks about so many things and is free enough to call the Capitol a kook magnet, which I also appreciate since I live there full time. Yeah, it's not, I don't know. Hello? Is that better? How's that? Can everybody hear me? I feel like I should sing karaoke or something. All right. I'll spare you that. All right, there are a number of goals to our ethics code. You know, we want to make sure that we maintain the respect of people. We also want to make sure that we're being impartial as we carry out our duties as public officers or public employees. We don't want to use our office for private gain, but the ethics laws are also there to keep there from being unnecessary barriers to public service. And I think the Commission keeps that in mind as they interpret these laws. We want to make sure that they're interpreted fairly. We don't want to scare off good people from wanting to serve in a public position, and so we try to strike that balance. We have 9 members on the Commission. No more than 5 from any one political party. It is bipartisan, and when somebody asks me the political affiliation of one of our members, I have to look it up, and I think that's a good thing. 5 of our members are appointed by the governor, no more than 3 from one political party, 2 by the Speaker of the House, they have to be from different parties, and 2 by the President of the Senate. So we have a good mix of people. They are not paid. They're only reimbursed for their travel. They come from all over the state. We have some who previously served as elected officials. We have our fair share of lawyers, of course. We've had rabbis, reverends, school teachers, real estate professionals, insurance professionals, you name it, every walk of life. And I think that's something important that the State Ethics Commission offers that maybe you don't see with the proliferation of some of the more local commissions or ethics efforts that you might see. We are separated and away from the intricacies of your local area, and we try to bring an objective public report, if nothing else, to what has occurred in the given situation so that anybody can read for themselves and draw their own conclusions regardless of whether or not they agree with the Commission on Ethics decision on a matter. Our commission interprets the ethics laws in 2 ways, by issuing advisory opinions when they're asked for them and by ruling on complaints. I'll go ahead and tell you that we would much rather give you opinions than investigate you as a subject of a complaint. So hopefully by being here today, we can help keep you out of that complaint process. I'm going to start by talking about our opinion process because you'll hear me state numerous times during today's presentation that we want you to call us, we want you to ask for an opinion. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you about that process. We have for 3 flavors of advice, if you will. We have informal and over the phone. You can reach us every day of the week, normal business hours. We have a real life person who answers the phone. And generally, we can return your call that day and try to get you the assistance that you need. Over the phone is very informal. I think it's a good way to start any sort of inquiry. We can kind of start to review what opinions there might be on the topic, and you can start to decide whether or not you want to kick it up another level. Maybe you want something in writing from the commission about it. We won't write you just based on a phone call, okay? We won't give you written advice saying yay or nay on a situation if we've only got our phone call to rely upon. We're going to say, okay, we'll write to you, but you have to put all the facts in writing to us. The opinion process is not an investigative process. That opinion is going to be based solely on the facts that you provide. So any facts that are intentionally or mistakenly omitted, if they are material, could affect the outcome of the opinion, and that's an important thing. Informal advice, written informal opinions, come from our legal staff. They would just be in letter form. You would email us, fax us, snail mail us, and then we would provide you with a response in writing from our staff attorneys, provided that we had sufficient precedent from the commission on a particular subject. For example, voting conflicts. We have lots and lots and lots of voting conflict formal opinions issued by the commission. That makes it much easier for our legal staff to be able to provide informal guidance because we have the ruling of the commission. And the turnaround time on those informals can be, pretty quick. It can be, a day or two. Depending on the complexity of the issue, it could take, a little longer. But we do try to be sensitive to being quick in our turnaround times at the staff level whenever possible, because we want to help keep you out of trouble. The formal opinion process, you go before our full commission, and that takes a little bit longer. Our commission meets about 8 times a year, every 6 to 8 weeks or so. It's the same type of process. You put your facts in writing to the commission. Our legal staff will look over it. They might call you or send you an email, ask you some follow-up questions, and they'll draft an opinion to go before the commission at their next meeting. The opinion process is a public process. So it would be scheduled for one of our public session meetings. You'd have the opportunity to attend, although it wouldn't be required. They might ask questions of you, or if you disagree with the staff draft of the opinion, it's your opportunity to tell the commission why you think that staff may have erred in their discussion of the facts. You can have an attorney seek the opinion on your behalf. You could ask your county attorney to seek the opinion on your behalf. Citizens or your political opponent cannot seek an opinion about your conduct, okay? Only you can do that. You're the one with legal standing to ask a question about your conduct. So if a citizen writes to us, suspects that you've done something improper and wants an opinion on that, we cannot provide them an opinion. We'll provide them with information on the applicable law. We might even provide them with some ethics opinions that have ruled on similar issues, but we will not give them an opinion on your conduct. You also have the authority to request an opinion on anyone whom you supervise or have the authority to hire or fire. As do the employees at the county level. They can seek an opinion about their own conduct or about the conduct of an employee whom they supervise. Or have the authority to hire and fire. So there are ways to get advice when you have questions about the applicability of the ethics law. We are there to help sort those out and keep you out of trouble. Before we go to misuse, Herb mentioned there is an opinion that the commission issued recently regarding the training requirements that were passed. It is for 50-minute hours. It does have to include ethics, the Code of Ethics in Article 2, Section 8, which of course will cover all of that today. Also public records and sunshine law. You can get the training in sessions like these. You can get the training online. The Florida Bar does a training thing in February, I think, normally. You can get it from there. It is on the calendar year. So each calendar year, another 4 hours. There is nowhere to report your 4 hours. You need to keep track of the training for yourself at this point. There is also the ability for agency attorneys, county attorneys, city attorneys to provide training for the folks in their agency. So you don't just have to get it from the Commission on Ethics, although I'll tell you, there may be some training things that are offered out there that you might like to take, webinars, tape sessions, and so forth. Just be aware that you check out who might be providing that training, because ultimately, if they are not enough of an expert on the topic and you get called to account for something that you do based on their advice, you would still be held accountable. In the yellow shirt first, please. Okay. The question was, does the training requirement apply to city commissioners and legislators? City commissioners, no. It's constitutional officers. Legislature, I think they're allowed to do training according to their rules. And as I understand it, I hear you giggling, but I will tell you that, that our staff hasn't been involved already in training with the Senate and the House. And so I do believe that they are working to abide by these same 4-hour requirements that you all are present for. In the blue shirt. That's correct. There is no enforcement would be interesting. My assumption is, since it's a requirement in the ethics code, that if somebody were to file a complaint and say that you hadn't taken your 4 hours, that could be potentially investigated and dealt with through the complaint process. I saw some more hands. Yes. Yes. He said, what about keeping a record? What about keeping a record of your training? Right. What I recommend that you do, and I think Latrez might have something to say about it, but keep a file on training in your office. And if you get a certificate of completion for a certain number of hours of a training course, or you take an online training course and you get a certificate of completion, keep those in a file so if it's ever called into question. Latrez? Did everybody hear that? FAC's going to have your back on this, it sounds like. They're going to help keep the records. They can provide you with certificates as necessary. Yes? Mm-hmm. Yeah. School board members are required to take the same 4 hours. Whether or not FAC would allow other constitutional officers in here, I don't know. But I will tell you that on the Commission's website now, we have a link on our navigation page to training. On that page, we have the most updated rules. We have the most recent opinion that deals with training, and we also have a listing of open training opportunities that the Ethics Commission staff is involved in. So you can check that page. Your friend who's a school board member can check that page. We're going to be also working to have some training modules up on our website in addition to the online training courses that are already offered, but maybe some short snippets on things like disclosure, voting conflicts, and things like that, ultimately to have as much training up there as possible at the lowest cost, if not free, as possible for people to be able to get those hours. We want to try to make it easy for people to do it. Yes, ma'am.
How can you tell if it's done online, if the person completed it themselves, or if they had their secretary do it?
Her question is, what if you do the training online? How can you tell that the person completed it themselves or versus having their assistant or their secretary take it? And I guess the real answer is, you know, you get a login and you get a password. If you put that responsibility off on somebody else and they complete that pretending to be you, and you have the information that you completed it. Ultimately, you're still on the hook for your conduct under the ethics code. And if you tried to come to the commission after a complaint was filed and said, well, I didn't know the law was like that, they said, well, didn't you take the online course? So ultimately, you're the officials who are on the hook for all of these requirements. So it's my hope that you'll attend whatever training you need and retain as much as possible. Other questions? Yeah, you have to actually retain it. I'm going to quiz you later. No. The main point to me of the training, whether it be in person or online or webinar, is not to make you an expert on this stuff, but make you knowledgeable enough so that you're a little bit worried that there could be a problem with something. Puts things on your radar screen. Oh, I remember I'm supposed to, there was, Kerrie said something about outside employment at that training conference. Let me take a look, or let me give her a call and see what that was. That's, I think, the awareness is what's most important that you come out of here with. I've been with the commission since '92, pretty much. I left for a few years. And I still learn things about the Code of Ethics every day, because every situation that people bring to us from the real world is unique. So we spend a lot of time talking about these laws and how they affect people and the real world application of them. And so just know the main thing is to know when you need to ask the question of your counsel or of us. All right. Now that you know how to get an opinion, we're going to talk a little bit about misuse. And I think Herb, with the honest services fraud and things, he touched on a lot of misuse. Sometimes can be to the extreme and you wind up in jail. The commission can't send you to jail even if you deserve to go. We don't get to do stings. They don't give us tasers. We don't carry weapons. They don't give us a flak jacket. I would love at least a couple of those things, but those are not allotted for in our budget. And I do the budget, but they won't approve that. Misuse. To me, this is very simple, and probably to all of you in this room, it is too. You are not allowed to use or attempt to use your position or the official resources that are within your trust to do your duties as county commissioner. You are not allowed to use that authority, use that position, use those resources in order to bring about a special privilege, exemption, or benefit for yourself or for someone else. It is not allowed, okay? But it still happens. When you inject your public position into a purely private dispute, that can be where you start to ride the line of a potential misuse. The traffic stops with the "do you know who I am?" When I try that, nobody knows who I am, so it doesn't help me. I just have to rely on pity. Yes, sir.
I have a business in my county that I've operated next year for 50 years.
Congratulations.
I do business with nearly every agency, not necessarily the county, but every agency in the county and every business in the county one time or other. I have employees that do all the soliciting and most of it. I stay out of the middle of that. Is there any way that gets in a gray area? Because they're calling on people that eventually may have business before our county, and I always abstain from voting on any issue that we've ever had involved with. Does that clear me of any conflict?
He's asking about, he's a successful businessman in his county and a county commissioner. You can't help that people know who you are. You can't help that people know that you run a good business in town. Those are good things. And we're going to talk about, I'm going to hold your question till a little bit later, we're going to talk about contractual relationships and your public agency and what things are permitted and what things are not permitted, and voting conflicts and when you might have to abstain from a vote. But you're still allowed to be a regular, hardworking, productive member of your community. The ethics laws are not designed to keep people from being nice to you, if they still are, ever, or or to keep you from being able to fuss at somebody if you're unhappy with the service or the product that that you have received. That's not what it is for. Question. Well, misuse, there's nothing in the misuse law that says that you can't provide recommendations. You do have to be a little bit careful when you do that. We have an ethics opinion, CEO -0213, if I remember correctly, and I don't know if I have it with me, but it is a great opinion. It goes through the kind of the history of misuse and things like use of business cards, use of stationery, writing letters of recommendations, endorsement of friends in political races and things like that. So take a look at that opinion. It kind of goes through the do's and don'ts of what you can and cannot do. Presumably, you're not the county commissioner in that county, providing just a simple recommendation for someone whom you know, when there aren't any other aggravating facts to that scenario, likely would not rise to the level of a corrupt misuse of position. 112.313, subsection 6, the opinion that I referenced was 02-13. The thing to remember about misuse is it's not just any old use of office, but it's a corrupt use of office. So that means you have to have acted with a wrongful intent. You had to have done something that you knew was wrong, but you did it anyway. It has to be done so that you can obtain compensation for or receive compensation or some sort of benefit from an act or omission. And the activity has to be inconsistent with the proper performance of your public duties. Well, what in the world does that mean? Well, what that kind of means is that if you are vested with the authority to make a decision about something, just because you make a decision that somebody doesn't like doesn't mean you're unethical. It doesn't mean you've misused your position. You have full discretion on certain things to make decisions. Not everybody's going to be happy about that. You're allowed to make those decisions based on the information that you have in front of you. That doesn't convert it to a misuse of position. To have a violation, it has to have both things, both the corrupt intent and the benefit, okay, or the attempted benefit. If you only have just a benefit, then it's not necessarily going to rise to the level of misuse. Yes, sir? I think, let me look here in my magical book that has changed. For years, I had the same book because they hadn't changed the laws. It was like my Bible. It was all tabbed. I knew exactly where everything was. Now they went and changed it on me, and I'm very lost still. But it says, a special privilege, benefit, or exemption for yourself or someone else. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, the job might be a special benefit for that relative. They would potentially be able to receive a special benefit of that employment. But the question to me would be, is there corrupt intent? Did you use your position as county commissioner in a wrongful manner? Well, getting a relative employed might not be corrupt. Not necessarily. And you're kind of wading into the waters of I think, nepotism questions as well, which is a little bit different, and we will get to. What we see misuse on a lot is, of course, traffic stop type things. I think Herb talked to you earlier about Rudy Malloy triple dipping, requesting reimbursements, misusing his position to get multiple reimbursements on the same trip. Those types of things, the purchasing cards, use of the tax exempt number. I've seen constitutional officers use their tax exempt ID to buy themselves a washer and dryer. We've seen, we had a case, not on a sales tax, yeah, that's when they buy them as a sales tax holiday. Then we all get it. I've seen where constitutional officers, an employee of their office was speaking to people when they came into their office about who their preferred candidate was for running for, I think it was a tax collector. And in the tax collector's office, a couple of the employees were talking to people as they came in about who they might like to vote for and why they should vote for different people. And the commission found that to be a misuse because those customers are a captive audience. They come in to just transact the business that we all have to transact. And for them to take their position sitting across that desk, they're supposed to just do the business that the people came in for, not provide them that extra special service of discussing their favorite candidate. Yes?
So, let me just make sure I understood what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a constitutional officer who is actually promoting a candidate to run for office, they take the whole page ad in their name, they can pour it out of their own money, they go to all of the presentations this candidate is giving and say, this is my choice, this is my candidate. I mean, it's very openly, nothing hidden at all. Is that a misuse?
Right. Well, you don't lose your right to be a person and support particular candidates. The misuse case that we dealt with was the person was campaigning in their office when people came to their office to conduct business. And that was what the commission said was a misuse, was that type of activity. We've seen activities where Port Authority employees were fabricating barbecue grills and doing repairs on their friends' cars at their facilities. Those types of things were misused. Years ago, a county commissioner using county equipment and county employees to pick the watermelons from his watermelon farm, take them to market. We dubbed him the watermelon caper. What about, I get several calls a year, somebody complaining that a commissioner or an elected official was getting somebody's driveway paved. Paving issues come up, those types of things. Yes? Right. In the ethics laws, there is no requirement that a public official self-report or report someone else that they know of who has violated the ethics laws. I mean, there is no obligation that you invite them to file a complaint against you, although sometimes people do invite people to file complaints against them, and there's no obligation to report them to us, okay? Just like there's no obligation that under the ethics laws that you reply to every single email that you get from people, although I'm sure you try to. So misuse, obviously, it sounds like a really giant umbrella, and we get many complaints alleging misuse, but it's actually, to me, a lot tougher than a lot of the statutes to get a violation on because of that requirement of the corrupt intent. Simply chairing a meeting in a forceful manner, being rude, lying in and of itself does not rise to the level of a misuse. But that is not to encourage such behavior because, you know, the ethics process is such, one of the main functions of the commission is to issue public reports. So if somebody files a complaint against an official outlining some really bad behavior, you know, some egregious stuff, and I know you all have probably witnessed others behaving in a way that made you cringe. Although the commission might wind up dismissing that complaint at some point, either without investigation or finding no probable cause, the public report will then be a public record of some really ugly behavior that somebody would not necessarily want on their record. And complaint records are permanent. So remind your friends of that who behave badly when you get back to town. Another section of the code that is related to misuse is the inside information prohibition. This does not require a corrupt intent. It applies to you as a current officer. It also applies to you as a former officer after you leave. And just like misuse, it applies to all of the employees at the county. You can't take information that you have by virtue of your position that's not available to members of the general public. It might be confidential, or it might be information you have in advance of something that will be public. You can't take that information and use it for your personal benefit or for the benefit of an entity or some sort of business entity. It's kind of like an inside information law. We had an employee, and I can't remember if it was of a city or county, they requested from personnel a list of the names and addresses of all the employees, and they wanted to use that in their real estate business. This was back when real estate was booming, if we can all remember when that was. They had a business on the side. They took those addresses. They sent out real estate solicitations to everyone on that list. It just so happened that they had obtained the confidential addresses of some law enforcement folks. Okay? And they ultimately had a complaint filed against them for that. So that is inside information. It also can apply for some employees. Maybe they have some very intricate knowledge that has been gained on a particular project. They would not be permitted to go and then use that once they leave to enrich themselves. Did I see another hand? Yes.
So if someone puts in a public records request from the employee,
You can certainly put in a request for public records for information, but you want to make sure you go through the normal channels for making that request. Right, it was just sort of an informal, hey, I need a list of, and they assumed it was for a public purpose. So you're allowed to make public records requests just like anyone else. You just want to be sure that you're going through the same channels as everyone else. Okay? All right, families. Some of us get the pleasure of working with our families, and some of us have the pleasure of not having to work with our families. And that's what the nepotism law is about. It matters who is actually vested with the authority to appoint, employ, promote, or advance people into positions within your agency, the county. It matters who's vested. Maybe your county commission is the one who's vested to make hiring and appointing decisions of certain things. Maybe by charter, maybe it's the county administrator. Just because you're a county commissioner doesn't mean that you're the one vested with the authority to make all of the hiring decisions of the county. Maybe it is, but that's an important distinction, and you want to know that if you have relatives who want to apply for positions within the county. It's important to note that You cannot delegate your authority away to someone else just so your relative can put in for a position, okay? You can't just temporarily delegate it away. So you can't appoint, employ, promote, or advance a relative. You also cannot recommend that relative get a position within the county, okay? Or that they get advancement. This includes your authority as a member of the county commission when you appoint people to boards. Planning and zoning, maybe there's a library board, boards of adjustment, all of those boards that you get to appoint people to, your relatives cannot be appointed to those boards, even if you abstain from the vote. Abstention from the vote does not cure a nepotism violation, okay? Yes? We are going to talk about who your family is in just a moment. Did I see a hand in the back? Same question. We're going to talk about your family momentarily. All right. Yes?
We had this recently happen with one of our new board members. His brother was on the planning board, so he had to get off. It seemed the last thing on there, it sounded like another person, they wanted to appoint his brother to it. He still couldn't do it. You said another member of the collegial body can't appoint him either.
Correct. If your collegial body is the one who appoints people to a particular board, relatives of the people on that body cannot be appointed. It's important to note that you can be grandfathered in the nepotism law. If someone has a relative serving on a board and they're elected to be county commissioner, that person can remain on that board. They don't have to leave. Just like if somebody's relative is the county administrator and they're elected to be county commissioner. The law does not require that somebody already holding that position resign. Okay? You can choose to make that happen, but the law doesn't require it. For employees, they're effectively frozen. If it's a position under your jurisdiction or control, they can't receive promotions or advancements, things like that. They would be frozen for the duration of your service as county commissioner. Now, if it's an appointment, they can remain in that board seat until such time as they would need to be reappointed. Your board would not be able to act to reappoint them to that board. Does that make sense? Yes, in the back. No, the board cannot appoint your relative. No. And there is no exemption for county commissioners, so I won't even talk about the exemption that's in the law. If you have a relative who is serving in a position that county commissioners are vested with the authority to do. Whether or not your relative can receive promotions or advancements while you're a county commissioner, which is what her question relates to, depends on whether the county commissioners are the ones vested with the authority for appointment and promotion and advancement of the EMS folks where he works. That's where it hinges. And you just also want to make sure that you're not involving yourself in that process by recommendation. Okay. Yes? Mm-hmm. Right. What the commission has said is that in the past is across the board raises or adjustments, cost of living adjustments, things like that, that those are okay. Yes, yes. She said, have we ever had somebody who came to us and said that there was a commissioner who took their son to a department head and said, I want you to meet my son, and I think you should give him a job. We see a little bit of everything at the commission, and under the nepotism law, you would not want to do that because that would be advocating for your relative, even though I'm sure they are the smartest, brightest, and most qualified person for the job. In fact, we had a complaint dealing with a fire personnel where somebody's brother was trying to get a position, and the relative stayed completely out of that until he found out that they had chosen somebody who wasn't his brother. And then he proceeded to tell them what idiots they were for not choosing his brother, who was infinitely more qualified because he had gone through certain training, because he had certain experience and so forth. That was a complaint. Okay, that was a violation. Yes? This law does cover non-compensated citizen boards. Okay, you don't want your relatives to be appointed. Yes? Yes, thank you. I was getting to that. Who is your relative? Well, to make things simple, the legislature has more than one definition of relative in the statutes covering ethics. For the broadest definition of relatives is found in the gift law, which is good. The gift law has the broadest definition of relatives. Nepotism has the next largest definition of relative, and that's going to be your father, mother, son, daughter, brother, sister, uncle, aunt, first cousin, nephew, niece, husband, wife, father-in-law, mother-in-law, son-in-law, daughter-in-law, brother-in-law, sister-in-law, stepfather, stepmother, stepson, stepdaughter, stepbrother, stepsister, half-brother, or half-sister. So, there are a lot of them, but I have to tell you, at the ethics conference, I spent an hour presenting, I think, on nepotism. And there are some people who you think are your relatives who are not. And you don't get to choose who those are, incidentally. But we have an opinion that says that a person's mother's sister's husband is not your uncle. Mother's sister's husband, not your uncle. If they get divorced, are they still, there's nothing that says former. If you want to hire your ex, I don't know. Yes?
So while it addresses the first tier of cousins, does it address half cousins or step cousins?
The law says first cousin for nepotism. Yes. So I say those things. I told you all of the people who are relatives, that's all in section 112.3135. And there are some situations where people wind up not being relatives whom you all this time thought were your relatives. You buy them stuff at the holidays, right? They're around. So if there is somebody who you believe to be your relative who wants to be appointed to a board and who you think would be supremely capable to serve, talk to your county attorney, talk to the commission, and we'll try and walk through it and see what the situation really is. Yes, in the back. I'm not sure I follow you. Somebody who's an existing employee? What the nepotism law, she's asking about a special promotion for a relative. If you are vested with the authority to make those promotions or advancements, that relative would be frozen, okay? if the board is, speaking generally, what the law says is if the board is vested with the authority, that promotions, advancements, appointments cannot happen to board members' relatives, even if the official abstains. Okay? And I think it's an important distinction because we've seen some cases recently where officials sought advice from their board attorney and were told that they could have their relative appointed if they abstained. Okay? So that's the most important thing for you to remember leaving here today about nepotism. Now that we've talked about our families a little bit, we're going to switch gears. We're going to talk about gifts. And we're going to start with the quid pro quo laws that we have, which I think you also saw this morning with Herb, can turn into bribery and criminal things and land you in federal prison and take all the money you ever thought of making and all of your retirement and your divorce settlement. So that would make me really, really mad. That would make me really mad. I don't mind saying that at all. I'm going to be careful because I'm being recorded. All right, so the ethics code, there are actually 5 laws pertaining to gifts in the ethics code. You are lucky because only 4 of them apply to you. So you don't have to deal with that executive branch expenditure ban. And we're not going to talk about that today. But that adds an extra special layer on the top. It used to be 4. The legislature added another in, and we will get to talking about that. The first thing that you want to know is that you cannot ask for anything in exchange for your official action. Hopefully you all came in here today knowing that. Quid pro quo. Also, you, your spouse, and your minor children cannot accept anything of value when you know or you should have known that that thing was being given to you because you were expected to participate or take action on something that was meaningful to the person giving it to you. So, the greater the value of the thing being received, the more you should question the motivations of the person giving that thing to you. Or, the closer in time that person is giving you something, making that donation to your favorite charity, providing your wife with something, giving your kids tickets to Disney, if it's right before a decision that you're making that affects that person, you should probably not take that thing. Okay? Those are quid pro quo laws. We have had an opinion that dealt with it in a more subtle way, not with an elected official, but an employee of a university who evaluated food service for the university. And the company who had the contract wanted to provide that administrator with a meal card to go and have food in the different places around campus to help them evaluate the food service that they had the contract for. The issue was this was a free unlimited meal card for this official. This official had the foresight to come to the commission and say, hey, can I take this free unlimited meal card from this company that has a contract with the university to do food service? And the commission said no, because the potentially great value of free unlimited meal card sort of negated the stated purpose of the card being given for them to be able to evaluate food. And if you work under somebody who's gotten free unlimited meal cards from this particular company, and you have something negative you want to say or do an evaluation of that company, would you really be very willing to give negative feedback on a company that was providing your boss with this kind of a perk? So to this official's credit, they sought the opinion. The commission said don't do it, and they didn't do it. So that's a little more subtle than somebody handing you a bag of cash and you sticking it up under your shirt, walking out of the office, and going straight to jail. But a potential problem nonetheless. We had a county corrections officer who was found to have solicited and accepted things in exchange for his value, in exchange for his action. He was soliciting from inmates and their families, getting things from them, and in exchange, he supplied cigarettes and telephone access and other items in return for those actions. All right, so those are the first two restrictions. They're quid pro quo. They apply to everyone. This is new. Gifts from political committees. I'm sure you all saw in the newspaper, there were write-ups of different officials who had these special CCEs and accounts where they were allegedly living pretty high on the hog on the basis of those committees that they had. So the legislature wanted to tamp down on that, and this year, this was their attempt to do that. You would be prohibited from accepting any gift from a political committee, and it includes your parents, spouses, siblings, and children. You cannot knowingly accept any gift from a political committee. And for the purposes of this particular law, gift means anything of value that is not primarily related to contributions, expenditures, or other political activities authorized under Chapter 106. The Commission has not had any opportunity to interpret this law yet. No questions have been asked, but I can tell you that if you violate this law, in addition to the penalties you'll be subject to in our ethics code, which I'll talk about later, you will also, or could also, receive a penalty of up to 3 times the value of the gift that you accepted from the PAC. Yes? RIPE. A RIPE, in our office, we refer to people as RIPEs. They're reporting individuals or procurement employees. You are a reporting individual by virtue of the fact that you file annual financial disclosure. That Form 6 makes you a reporting individual. We call people RIPE around our office. Yes? She said a gift is not the same as a political contribution. For purposes of this law, I can only tell you what the law says because the Commission hasn't interpreted, but a gift is going to be anything of value that's not primarily related to those contributions, expenditures, or political activities that are specifically authorized in 106. Okay? So that's a new one. Let's move on to the gift law. This is everyone's favorite, the one we've known and loved for so long. Was enacted in the early 90s. It only applies to reporting individuals. It's going to be all of our elected officials. Some of your employees are also going to be subject to this gift law, but not everyone. There are 4 basic takeaways to this law. You can't solicit a gift in any amount from a lobbyist or principal or vendor. They've now officially added vendors to the list of those whom you can't take gifts from. You also don't want to take gifts worth more than $100 from lobbyists, principals, or vendors. You want to report gifts that are worth more than $100 that are received from other people who are not your relatives and not lobbyists or vendors. And the other thing you really want to know today is you can accept gifts in any amount from your relatives, and you don't have to report them, and they're not prohibited unless they're in exchange for your official action. Did I see a question? Yes, sir. Okay, his question was, if you go to dinner, and we'll talk about some valuation and things later, but if you go to dinner and somebody buys you dinner and it's $15, you know, maybe they buy you dinner more than once on different occasions, how do you figure out what the value of that is, and is it per occurrence? Meals consumed in a single sitting are considered a single gift. So if somebody takes you out to dinner and the meal is $15, you've received a $15 gift. Under state law, that's not going to be prohibited or reportable. As an aside, and we'll get into this more later, if they take you to dinner and your dinner is $15 and your spouse comes along, or you bring a friend along and they cover that person's dinner as well, and that's $15, well, that's a $30 gift because that's considered an indirect gift to you. The fact that they gave the dinner to your plus one would be a $30 gift, and technically they're required to report that on a Form 30. Yes, question in the back. Yes, his question was the definition of ripe. Does it include just Form 6 filers or Form 1 filers as well? And it does include Form 1 filers. So anyone who is appointed to a board that is required to file financial disclosure, like your land planning and zoning boards, your boards of adjustment, there may be other boards who are also required to file disclosure. Anybody who files that annual financial disclosure form, including myself, is subject to this gift law and the prohibitions within it. Yes?
Other than, now it talks just, you don't have to worry about relatives, but what about your girlfriend who's been your friend for 35 years? And when I go out to dinner with she and her husband, maybe once a month, and then we go to their club, he always picks up the tab.
Right. She says, what about gifts from friends? We're going to get to that in terms of who's your friend, who's your relative, how to value it, when do I report it, and when do I say no thank you. But first, let's talk about what a gift is. A gift is pretty much anything you don't pay for within 90 days under the law. Okay? Preferential rates, use of property, our favorite thing, tickets, especially if it's to an FSU Seminole football game, food and beverage, membership dues. I don't have to watch it this year. We're good. So I've just been so long. I've been waiting. We could still lose, though. We could still lose to that other team. Plants, flowers, floral arrangements are also gifts. Yes, question?
If you work on a foundation that supports a property owned by the county, and people give you gifts for auctions to support the foundation,
People giving you gifts for a charity? Under the law, you are permitted to accept gifts on behalf of a charity as long as you don't maintain possession of those gifts any longer than it takes to turn them over to them, okay? With one caveat. If it's your personal charity, if it's, the Kerrie Stillman Homes for the Holiday charity and somebody wants to give me, a check for that and that's my charity and I have some control over how those dollars are spent or what actually happens to them, you can't say that that's a gift to a charity. Okay. What if you are the right? If the gift is intended for the charity, the law does allow for gifts to be accepted on behalf of a charity. Now, when we start dicing out and parsing out things, if you have, as a board member, a lot of control over what happens to donations and where those things are going, you want to ask those questions of the commission, I would say. Yes?
Isn't that what they went after some of the Palm Beach commissioners for honor services?
He said, well, what about what they went after the Palm Beach people for honest services? Now, that may have been, and I can't remember now because there's been so many, but soliciting gifts for charity is it's in exchange for, give to my charity, I'm going to kind of control, was more of a kickback type scenario. Directing gifts. Right. Right, sort of directing gifts. Somebody says, oh, I want to give you something, and you say, well, why don't you give it to these fine folks over here? There are, when there are factors that frustrate the stated intent of the law, you will get gotten one way or another. You will get gotten, as we like to say in my house. A lot of people who are in office do good work for charities, and they did good work for charity before they came into office. So the gift law is not designed to keep people from being able to continue to do good work, but it's also not there to shield you from action should you be using your position in a corrupt manner to direct things, so that some people like to ride along that line, and I would discourage you from doing that. What is not a gift? Well, the salary associated with your private employment is not a gift. Campaign contributions are also not a gift. Awards that you receive in recognition of your service, those many plaques that you probably don't have room enough on your wall anymore for, those are not gifts. In the law, in 112.312, subsection 12, 12A specifically lays out what is a gift. 12B tells you what is not a gift, okay? And there are, honorarium event-related expenses are not gifts. Use of a public facility or public property that's made available by a government agency for a public purpose, not a gift. The transportation that you receive from the county to do your public duties, not a gift. Here's one that might interest many of you. Gifts that are provided directly or indirectly by a state, regional, national organization that promotes the exchange of ideas between and professional development of government officials and employees, and, which is important, whose membership is primarily composed of elected or appointed officials or staff. Okay? Things received from that. So groups such as the Florida Association of Counties, oftentimes if they need to provide something to you, maybe you're on the board or maybe you're a member, that thing may not be a gift that would be either reportable or prohibited. Yes?
On the slide back, where it talked about staying overnight, how do you visit a friend's house, all the other connections that we have? How do you understand what that constitutes to pay that back in 90 days?
We are going to get to the value of staying at a friend's house. Yes, we're going to get to that. Yes? For definitions, 112.312, subparagraph B, as in boy, specifically addresses what is not a gift under the statute. A tells you what is a gift. Okay, we're going to move on to how to report, who do you report from, how to value. But first we have to talk about who's a lobbyist. It's anybody who's paid, who's seeking or has sought within the last year, 12 months, to influence you or the decisions of your agency, the county. Those people are considered lobbyists. That's not necessarily John Q. Citizen who's mad because somebody's not mowing the medians, okay? Those folks aren't lobbyists. But in addition to lobbyists, you now have to worry about vendors, okay? Many years I've taught training and I've told people that they should consider vendors a lobbyist. And so you cannot solicit a gift in any amount from a lobbyist, the lobbyist partner, firm, or employer, or the principal of that lobbyist, or a vendor. You can't solicit it for your benefit, the benefit of your immediate family, or for the benefit of another reporting individual. Okay? I've heard of things where a particular elected official might solicit donations to throw another reporting individual a party. And they would think that maybe that wasn't a bad thing because it wasn't for themselves. But if that other person is a reporting individual, you cannot do it. Yes? No, if you're soliciting it, he knows somebody who gets gifts every day. What is the limit? The gift law is not on an accrual basis. It's on a per occurrence basis in terms of how the law works. However, the Commission on Ethics is neither toothless, as is often stated, nor are they stupid. So if somebody is trying to game the system by, giving somebody gifts just under 100 each and every day so that that person could acquire a collection of certain things, I think you could still find yourself in hot water should a complaint be filed. Yes? His question is, what if a vendor wants to throw a party for your public works department or for people in there. The commission has a long line of opinions that says that gifts to an agency are not prohibited. However, if you have vendors and folks who want to donate money and throw parties and things, I would recommend, because of the new vendor language in the statute, that you contact the commission or work through your county attorney on that to determine the permissibility of something like that. Because I don't know how or if the vendor part of it being in the law, could change, and I don't want to be too fast and loose here today and make you feel comfortable with something that the commission might not be okay with. Yes?
Or something like that, better for a commission and not in policy, so that the public.
He said, what about having a policy? Policies are great in terms of what can be done and what cannot be done, in terms of gifts or in terms of anything else, use of vehicles, use of cell phones, use of computers, use of P cards. Always good to have policies. If you are going to have policies, related to gifts and so forth, be sure to work with your county attorney and with the commission. You can have more stringent standards and policies at the county, but they can't be contrary to state law, and they can't relax it. And I think we did see an instance where there was a particular city who I think was not trying, they were trying to clarify their law, but in reality, it wound up being contrary to state law, and it got brought out in some opinions. They had to go back and change their policy. In the striped shirt, yes.
Will your guest speak?
Oh, sorry.
So while we learned earlier that your ethics code can be stronger than the state, when it comes to defining elements of the state, for example, what a lobbyist is, our county's lobbyist definition doesn't include for compensation. So it says that if you and I are in the grocery store and you talk to me about your grandmother, I have now been lobbied, and I have to enter that into the county's website for all to see. And there's been a lot of discussion about the fact that that is not constitutional, that definition, that while we would be stronger and we reinterpret through a county ordinance, a stronger definition for lobbying.
What she was saying is in Broward County, they have a more broad definition of lobbyist than what is in state law. That includes people who are not compensated. They're considered lobbyists, and so there's a lot of controversy as to whether or not that is permissible, under the Constitution. The answer is I don't know. The Commission on Ethics doesn't play any role in establishing local ethics commissions. We don't govern them. We don't have any sort of relationship by statute or otherwise with those entities. So any of those types of discussions or disagreements about application or what can be done, those are questions for the lawyers and potentially others, as opposed to the Ethics Commission. We wouldn't intervene and, and raise an issue with that.
So just to follow up, if you were to follow the state's definition of a lobbyist, but the county interpreted it differently,
You always have to follow state law because you're going to be accountable to us. If you have a local ordinance or a local commission, we don't enforce those local ordinances or rules or laws that you have. That would be handled at the discretion of your local ethics commission or inspector general or whatever type of body you had to enforce those local codes. But even if you adhere to your local codes, you're still subject to the state law and state codes. In the front row there, please. Okay, he said, what about the social gathering that was held last night? It might have been at that place they told me I wasn't allowed to go in because there was a private party. That's all right. I was next door. Here's the thing. Just speaking generally, when you pay a registration to attend a conference, there are often things that are included in that registration cost that everyone who attends gets to receive, and that's covered by your registration. When there are other things that are separate and away from your registration, which may not be covered by that registration, then you can possibly wander into gift territory. And whether or not you have really just depends on the specifics. So just be aware of that. We had some PSC cases a number of years ago that dealt with conferences and attending dinners and things being paid by regulated industries back at that time. But to get us back going, because I know you all don't want me to hold you late, I have already heard everyone's anxious to get back on the road today. You cannot accept, okay, we've already talked about you can't solicit a gift in any amount, not a peppermint, not a can of Pepsi or Coke or a cup of coffee. You can't solicit that from a lobbyist, partner firm, or principal, or a vendor. Also, you may not accept, directly or indirectly, any gift that's worth more than $100 from any of those prohibited donors. That means you might not have asked for it, but they're offering it to you. Okay? 2 tickets to the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, please. You can't take that. But if you didn't ask for it and they offered it, those tickets are going to be more than $100. $325 a piece, and I'm worried. Something bad is about to happen to my computer, Latrez. So what happens if you accept a gift worth more than $100 from a lobbyist or a vendor or one of those prohibited folks? Somebody said you report it. There is no place to report a gift valued at over $100 because it's prohibited. The only place to report that is on a complaint form. You are not allowed to accept those. The good news, thank you, Latrez. Let's remember what we said at the beginning. A gift is something that you do not pay for within 90 days. So when you are given something, you have some time to try to figure out, what is this thing worth? You know, what is the value of this thing that I have received? And if it's more than $100, give it back or pay for it. You can still go golfing. You just might have to pay for it. It's okay. Yes, sir. He says, what if the golf outing is $150? 150. Can you pay $50 and go on that golf outing? The answer is yes. I call that paying it down. If you pay that gift down to $100, it's no longer prohibited, but you need to know that that donor, if they're a vendor, let's say, they are supposed to report it on a Form 30. And they're supposed to tell you that they're giving you a reportable gift and that they are going to report it. Whether or not they notify you that you're getting a reportable gift, whether or not they actually report it, that is not on you. That's on them. Keeping that gift from being over $100, that's on you. Now, if you go golfing and you bring a friend along to golf, you'd have to pay for theirs, okay? Because it'd be both things, because that'd be considered an indirect gift. Yes? In terms of being given a car for a parade, and then kept use of property. Use of property can be a gift, so you have to think about what you're doing. Yes?
You said you can give it back within 90 days. If somebody gave you tickets, you didn't intend to get it all. It's happened. I got tickets, didn't intend to do them. I didn't use them. Found out afterwards, they said because it was after the event, it was still within the 90 days, I had to pay for the tickets I didn't even go to the event. After that, I solicited the tickets back within that 90 days.
Well, he says, what if I get tickets to something I didn't even realize that I had? I didn't go to the event, but I'm within the 90 days. The event's over. Can I just send the tickets back? There's no ethics opinion on that, but I would say no, that if the event has already passed and you possess the tickets and you could have gone to that event, or you could have passed the tickets to someone else to go to that event, you had value in those tickets. So if it's past the time and you still have the tickets and it's over $100, you want to pay. Okay, good for you. Okay, yes. Yes. Well, the tickets do have a value. For tickets, the value is face value on the ticket. Although at some point we had somebody decide they were going to print $0 on tickets to try to make it seem like they didn't have value. But we have opinions that have said that it's face value of the ticket, or sometimes it might be the cost of someone else to come in and partake of that same event. I don't think that, his argument is a ticket wouldn't have any value if you didn't use them, but those tickets have a cost to them. Somebody purchased them to give them to you, or somebody else could have used those tickets and paid for those tickets. So I think when we're talking about tickets, if you receive tickets and you don't want to go to that event because you're sick of going to events, or because it just isn't something that you wish to do, and you give those tickets to someone else, have you received a gift? Yes, you have. Okay? So even if you give those tickets away to someone else, you've received a gift. In the back.
Is it based on the face value of those tickets, or what the market value of those tickets would be? Because a lot of times you see suites and things that once you get that national championship game in Pasadena, maybe $100 ticket, but $10,000 to buy on eBay.
Yeah. Well, we do have opinions that value skybox tickets, so the valuation is a little bit different oftentimes. So if you receive tickets and it's a luxury box kind of gig, or the ticket comes with some extra wonderful things, give us a call. Let us help you walk through that. I saw some other hands up front. Yes, ma'am, and then I'll go.
About being a guest speaker. Many times we're all invited to different places to be the guest speaker. And if it's at a dinner, they'll say, oh, it's on us because
Right.
our guest speaker's there. And I always do because I'm afraid that
Right.
you venture into that thing. But I limit myself to $150 a month.
Right.
After that, I don't accept any more
Okay.
speaking engagements. But
Okay. About speaking engagements and things being given in speaking engagements, I'm coming to that next. We're going to be talking about honoraria and honorary events in the back, and then we'll move on.
If the returning tickets, is it the postmark, if you just mail them back, and you mail them on Friday, they get them on Saturday, how do you do this?
He said, if you're returning tickets, is it by postmark? If I mail them on Friday and the event's Saturday, am I good? I don't know. Y'all are wearing me out. See, I'm blonde. I can't possibly do this for much longer. I do not know. What I recommend is if somebody gives you something, start looking at it that day and don't wait. One more question, and then we're going to move forward. Yes. Great. He asked a question that I call gift from multiple donors. So what if you're going to golf and there are two different vendors and they're going to split the cost? So it's a $150 golf outing. Each vendor's going to pay $75 towards that gift. Have you received a prohibited gift? No. Because if they're, now let me qualify. I love gift questions. They're my favorite. If it's two vendors and they are two different entities, two different companies, not two vendors from the same company, but two different companies, then two different vendors have given you a $75 gift each, which is not prohibited. They should each report that on a Form 30. Now, here's the catch. Sounds like a deal, right? But you've gotten a $150 gift. So you then have to report that on a Form 9 as receiving a $150 gift from those two vendors. And let's just remember, let's hope a decision regarding those vendors isn't occurring real soon after that, because then people are going to wonder why you're taking nice golf outings from vendors. All right? All right, is it worth more than $100, and is it worth the aggravation? Lodging in a private residence is $44 a night. Okay, so you have friends. You go stay with friends at their home. You stay with your friends for 2 nights. The value of that is $88. Those friends are not lobbyists. They're not vendors. They're not a PAC. They're not anybody who would be prohibited or who would have to report. $88 gift, you're good to go. If you go to stay at your friend's house and you stay 3 nights, not a math major, 44 plus 44 plus 44, more than 100, right? Then you have a reportable gift from your friends whom you've known forever, who have no business to do with the county. Maybe they even live out of state, and they're just dear friends whom you visit. Technically, you've received a reportable gift. I'm sorry? It's considered the per diem rate, and that is how that is valued. And speaking of friends and gifts, the gifts that we're talking about today are not just those gifts that you receive from people who interact with you in your work as a public official. Any and all gifts you have to look at under the gifts law. Birthday gifts, anniversary gifts, wedding gifts, Christmas gifts, Hanukkah gifts, gifts just because you are a fabulous person. Any gift you receive as a reporting individual, you have to look at it under the gift law. For me, it's an affliction. Everything I read or see in the newspaper or that I get, I run through a gift analysis on it. Just because, and because I work for the Ethics Commission, it's not many gifts. But I have my very best friend has a business and is a licensed speech pathologist, licensed by the state. She provides speech-language services to one of my kids at a reduced rate. That's a gift, okay, from her. She's got nothing to do with the Ethics Commission. She's just a talented professional and a dear friend. So I'm not immune. I feel your pain on all of this, although I don't get I don't have as many friends as a lot of you do, okay? Funny how once you get elected, you have a lot more friends maybe than you used to, right? Suddenly you're very popular. They all want you at their parties. If you don't want to go to their parties, just tell them you work for the Ethics Commission. They won't invite you anymore. Okay, private transportation. Private airplanes, valued as the comparative commercial conveyance. It's an unrestricted coach fare. Tickets are face value, daily or event basis, whichever is greater. Whichever is greater. So what can you take? Gifts from relatives, gifts on behalf of charities or agencies, gift from non-lobbyists, but you have to report it if it's more than $100. Gift from governmental organizations and direct support organizations. We don't see those very often, but those are reportable. Incidentally, talking about gifts to agencies and gifts to officials, we recently, CEO 13-3, we issued an opinion to the General Counsel, the City of Jacksonville. And I know Jacksonville's a little bit different, being consolidated, but it involved the mayor's travel expenses that were being underwritten by other entities. And this may interest you because the commission said that the mayor's travel to conferences and events that was paid for by others would not be considered gifts to the city. Okay? Consistent with the legislative intent and the gift law and commission precedent, the mayor's travel constituted gifts to him personally, even though there may have been a public purpose to what he was going to attend. Only where the official's travel is paid for by his own agency And where his agency then receives reimbursement from the third party, would the reimbursement received be considered a gift to the agency? Okay? What we went on to say were that funds received by the city from third parties deposited into a public fund, which is then used to pay for travel for the mayor and other city officials, would also be a gift to the agency. Okay? So if they provide it to you directly, if they say, well, we'll get your plane ticket, or we'll get your hotel, and that'll be a savings to the county for you to do that. It's public business. It's considered a gift to you. You have to go through the regular, lawful requirements of the county, and your travel processes, the requisition and the reimbursement. You get the regular per diem, you get the regular meal allowance, you get the regular rate on the regular hotel, whatever that is. You can travel on officially approved government business by the county. The third party, the entity, could then reimburse the county for your travel. But if they provide it to you directly, you've received something from them. And something important that the commission articulated was that disclosure should be the goal for every reporting individual who receives any of the items listed in the statutory definition of gift. And that approach is in accord with what the legislative intent was when they enacted Chapter 90-502 in the laws of Florida back in the 90s when we dealt with the gift law. Okay? So there is a safe harbor there. Okay? And it's not a question, what they said was in form over substance, of allowing indirectly something that somebody couldn't do directly. An agency's upfront payment of your travel expenses ensures that the agency has made a decision in advance that the travel is necessary. It takes advantage of the agency's transparent processes for approving travel in advance, and it ensures that you're reimbursed at the government rate. In this way, the agency can offset an expense to its taxpayers of the necessity of official travel, while the public is protected against the potential for abuse that could arise if the travel for which any nominal public service could be identified were to be considered a gift to the agency. So you have to be careful, but there is that. It's CEO 13-3. It happened recently. Okay, we're going to pick up the pace here so that I don't run you over and you talk bad about me later. Honorarium event-related expenses. Those are not gifts. Yes?
I'm on the Regional Planning Council as a county commission representative. Chair of it is the Regional Planning Council's have an annual meeting. If I travel to that annual meeting, the Regional Planning Council reimburses me for expenses and picks up the hotel. Am I correct in what you just talked about? That would be considered a gift to me?
Is the Regional Planning Council a public entity?
Yes, ma'am.
And you serve on the board?
Yes.
It may be dealing with your position as a public official on that board. Right. Get with me after and we'll talk about it some more. Honorarium event-related expenses. This is different than gifts. An honorarium, of course, is something that you're paid as consideration for an oral presentation. An honorarium event is going to be that meeting or that series of meetings or functions at a convention held over a couple of days where you've been invited to make a speech or oral presentation. A lobbyist under the honoraria law is going to be the same definition as the gift law, okay? 12 months, they're paid, vendor, that sort of thing. You can't ask for an honorarium from someone that is, when that honorarium is in consideration for a speech that's related to your public office or duties. Okay, I can't ask for money from the Association of Counties for coming and talking to you today. This is my job, right? You also cannot accept honoraria from lobbyists and certain others, okay? So you cannot, even if you haven't solicited it, you cannot accept it if it's from a lobbyist. However, take heart. You are permitted to accept actual and reasonable expenses related to an honorarium event. Transportation, lodging, food, beverage, and registration fees. Okay, so if you're asked to speak and they want to reimburse your travel and meals, etc., they are allowed to provide you with those things, even if they're a lobbyist. Okay? So if they ask you to come speak, they can provide you with those things. It's not a gift. It's an honorarium event-related expense, so long as it's actual and reasonable. Okay? But you've got to report that on a Form 10. And this is where I want to tell you that I'm human, and in your materials on this slide, it says report on a Form 30. I can't tell you the number of times I looked over this presentation. I had somebody else look over it as well. We missed that typo. It's a Form 10 that you have to report honorarium event-related expenses. Unlike the gift forms, I'm sure you're familiar with Form 9. That's a quarterly form that you file in the calendar quarter, following the calendar quarter where the gift is received. But the Form 10 is an annual form. It's due July 1st. There is no grace period. Okay? It's due July 1st. Speaking, yes. Well, for me personally, would FAC be considered a lobbyist? The way our agency does things, we kind of consider that anybody is a potential lobbyist, particularly FAC, because there might be legislation or different things that we're dealing with. My agency pays for all of my travel expenses and meals in accordance with the state travel policies, and then Association of Counties will reimburse the Commission on Ethics for whatever my actual travel is that is signed off on by my agency. Financial disclosure, you know it, you love it. You've already turned yours in for the year, or you're currently being fined $25 a day for each day late, right? We got a lot of press about this. We fine people. Some people do not pay. And now, when they don't pay, we've got a little bit of a hammer to use on them. Hopefully no one in this room. But let me tell you how this works. Your forms, because of the new law, are now published on our website. People can pull up your form and look. Please do not supply us with your account numbers, your PIN numbers, your Social Security numbers. We don't want those, but people send them to us. And we have to redact those out before things go online for obvious reasons. We go through your form line by line, not reviewing the content of your form to see if it is correct, because the law does not authorize us to audit your form. But we go through line by line and check for account numbers, Social Security numbers, PIN numbers, and redact those. And we have a double checking process for that before it goes up. But people actually list out for us their account numbers for their bank accounts. People with a lot of money give us that information. We don't want it. Yes, ma'am. She said because the instructions say to list your bank accounts, some people will assume to list the account number. I think on this year's form, we do have something that says, please do not provide us with account numbers, but I will bring that up for form revision if it's not there to make that even more clear. We work each year to try to make the instructions as clear as possible without making the instructions 16 pages long. But you know, if you file annual financial disclosure, there are a lot of other forms that you might have to file, gift forms, Form 2 for representation before other agencies, if you're a lawyer or some other type of professional where you represent people before boards. For your disclosure form, this year, this is new, the legislature now allows that if you have an attorney or a CPA complete your form for you, they now will complete this certification, which will appear on the Form 6s that you receive next year, where they certify that they have completed the form lawfully. This doesn't get you out of a problem if you don't supply all the necessary information to your CPA or attorney, but it is there and it is new and available for you. A couple of CEOs to be to know about when you're filling out your form. CEO 1111 and CEO 12-10 talks about funds held in investment products like IRAs and 401ks. Also talks about the Florida investment plan versus the pension plan. If you're in the pension plan, sometimes it's hard to be able to figure out what to disclose there, but if you're in the investment plan, that often needs to be disclosed. Deferred retirement accounts also can be listed on your form. So there's good instruction in CEO 1111 and also CEO 12-10 about completing those forms. Yes?
On this, I fill out my form, but I turn in my tax return. That's prepared by my CPA. Do I have to go get him to sign this form, or is it only for the actual form?
It's for completion of the form. Just because you attach your tax return with your 6 instead of listing income, that is different. Some people have their CPA do the whole entire thing for them. But you certainly could, if they are completing the form, you could send it to them. This will be the first year that we have this available to you. Will be your next form that you file. Collection methods. Even though we offer convenient ways for people to pay their fines, we've had to send a number of people to collections for failure to pay their fine. And when collections was not able to collect, they just didn't pay, and ultimately the statute of limitations was 4 years, and the commission had no legal means to make the person pay, and we'd have to write them off. We received a lot of bad press about this, and we did not like any minute of having to write off these fines. And so the commission does not write these fines off anymore, but we can now withhold salary from public officers and employees. It's a pretty easy process if they don't pay. Now we can also garnish wages. We've hired a couple new people in our office to work on this. And the statute of limitations is now 20 years. So the main point of these fines is not because we enjoy fining people or we want to be a collection agency. We want compliance. We want everybody to file their forms on time. We have better than 99% compliance on disclosure. And many, I think if not all of our elected officials do get their forms in and filed. But there are still some people who don't file and still some officials who get fined and do not pay. And in the past, regardless of if we knew where they were and we knew what they did for a living, we couldn't do anything, but now we'll be able to get after them. Yes? Family and gifts? Thank you for asking. You said, going back to gifts, who's your relative for purposes of gift law? Pretty much everybody. It goes, the same relatives who were listed for gifts, it expands out to the person that you're engaged to. It's going to be, let's see here. Who's your daddy? I did not say that. Somebody out there said that. Okay, father, mother, son, daughter, brother, sister, uncle, aunt, first cousin, nephew, niece, husband, wife, your father and mother-in-law, son and daughter-in-law, brother and sister-in-law, stepfather, stepmother, stepson, stepdaughter, stepbrother, stepsister, half-brother, half-sister, grandparent, great-grandparent, grandchild, great-grandchild, step-grandparent, step-great-grandparent, step-grandchild, step-great-grandchild, person who is engaged to be married or who otherwise holds him or herself out as or is generally known as the person whom the public officer or employee intends to marry, or with whom the person intends to form a household, or any natural person having the same legal residence as the public officer or employee. So if somebody lives with you and they're not your relative, technically for the gift law, they're considered your relative. This is a good thing. Thanks for bringing that up. Dual public employment, this is new. You can't accept public employment or advancement in public employment if it's being offered to influence you, okay? If you're interested in accepting a public position, it has to meet conditions. It has to already be in existence, has to be created without knowledge that you wanted it, has to be advertised, and you have to be subject to the same hiring process as others, and you have to meet the minimum standards. The commission has not yet had opportunity to interpret this section of the law. If you are already in a public position, when you are elected, you can keep that position, just a little bit of grandfathering, but you also cannot accept any promotion or advancement if you know or should know that it's being done to curry favor with you. More on employment. You can't work for an entity that is regulated by or doing business with your office. That is just sort of mechanical. It's very straightforward. Employment might be a sole proprietor of a business, or you might be a compensated director of a corporation. A contractual relationship is usually going to mean that the parties have agreed to something and there's mutual consideration, usually money. A lot of people don't think about stock ownership as a contractual relationship, but there's case law that says it is. So if you own stock in a corporation, that can be a contract. Did I see a question over here?
You're gonna have commissioners that work for a company that eventually every company in your county is gonna come before your agency. How in the world do they work for a private company?
He said, how could you go and work for a private company because virtually everybody comes before the county? Well, it's not even about even coming for the county. It has to do with the business relationship. In this particular instance, it's actually being employed by or having some sort of contract with a company that does presently have some sort of contractual relationship with the county. You wouldn't be able to work for them. Yes? There are exemptions. He says, what if you're the only particular type of business in the county that does this particular thing? There's a sole source exemption, okay? If you're the sole source of supply, there might be things that have to be filed with the commission for that. But again, we don't want to put up unnecessary barriers to public service, but we do want to protect the public. Yes? Mm-hmm. Right. What he's talking about, contracts already being in place when you get elected, they can be grandfathered in. But then when it comes time for renewal, most times under the conflicting employment law, it's an either-or proposition. You have to sever your business relationship or sever the public service. Mm-hmm. Right. You could call Chris Anderson in our office, and he could probably talk to you about that. All right, so you can't work for those companies. You also can't have an employment or contractual relationship that creates a tug of war between your public duties and your private interests. Okay, that means the more intertwined your side business is with what you do in your public capacity, the more likely there is for there to be a temptation for you to dishonor your public duties. It's not about saying that you're a bad person and you're going to do bad. This law is actually preventative in nature. It doesn't want you to be put in a position where you might have to choose. Okay? Yes, question.
I was trying to ask back to the previous comment about sole source. Only hospital in the county pays for hospital indigent care. Non-paid position, sit on the hospital board, and hospital
Service on boards. Uncompensated service on boards usually will not get you into trouble under the conflicting employment statute, but could under the doing business prohibitions. If you're talking about sole source and particular exemptions and nonprofits, I'd recommend that you give us a call or get with me after and let me get your card and we can talk in detail, because I don't.
Kerrie has quite a few more slides, and she will be around as we break for lunch. So if we could hold questions till the end, then we'll get to lunch quicker.
Okay. All right. This is a good time to mention blind trusts. A new part of the law allows for you to create a blind trust. What the point of it is to give you a safe haven against having certain conflicting employment relationships or prohibited business relationships or voting conflicts. So if you have some assets, you can get somebody to set up a blind trust for you. There are very specific requirements within the law for that trust, obviously to make sure that it is truly a blind trust, and about what types of communications you can have with the trustee. And you have to file a form with the commission after the trust has been done, notifying the commission that there is a trust, and you may have to report that trust on your disclosure form. But I want you to know that it's there, and if that's something that interests you, give our office a call, and we can walk you through the specific requirements. I understand it's not an easy thing to get done. You do have to involve a lawyer. Okay. More business relationships. In your official capacity, this law has two parts. The first part prohibits you in your official capacity as a purchasing agent from directly or indirectly purchasing, renting goods or services or realty from a business where you, your spouse, or your child are an officer, a director, or own a material interest, which is about 5%. Okay? As a purchasing agent, that means that you're the person that has the authority to commit the expenditure of funds through a contract for a purchase of goods or services, as opposed to the authority to just request or requisition the contract by another person. You could act in an official capacity personally, but you also act in an official capacity when the board of which you are a member acts. So when your county commission acts, you act, even if you abstain. You can see that thread from nepotism. So essentially, you can't buy or rent stuff from a business where you or your spouse or your child are an officer, director, or a proprietor, even if it's a nonprofit. And there's no exemption of the fact that maybe you can get it cheaper from that business. There's no cheap exemption in the law, although there are a number of others: sole source, sealed competitive bid, rotation among all of the folks in that line of business within the county. The second part of business relationships says that you are prohibited from, in your private capacity, from renting or leasing or selling goods or services to your agency or to any other agency within your political subdivision, so other agencies within the county you would be prohibited from selling services to. Just working for a company that's selling to your agency may not necessarily violate the statute. We do have an opinion that dealt with a county commissioner who was an employee of a company doing business with various local government entities. And the commission said that a prohibited conflict would be created if he were employed by a company providing services to the county or to other constitutional offices of the county. But the conflict would not be there if the company provided services to other counties or to municipalities that were located inside his county and outside his county, provided that the company didn't pursue providing services where there were combined contracts in place that involved his agency or other agencies in the county. That's CEO 12-13. Okay, so those are prohibited business relationships, conflicting employment relationships. Those things are not cured by abstaining from a vote. But what is cured by abstaining from a vote? These are my least favorite questions to take. So if you call the office on a voting conflict question, ask for one of our staff attorneys. As a local elected officer, you can't vote on a measure that would inure to your special private gain or loss, or that you know would bring about special private gain or loss of a principal by whom you are retained, the parent organization or subsidiary, a relative, or a business associate. So who is a principal? Be your employer, It could be a client of your legal, accounting, or professional practice, or a corporation where you serve as a compensated director. Who's your relative? This is our third definition. It's different. For voting conflict, it's a smaller definition, okay? Who is your business associate? It's going to be somebody who you're engaging in a commercial or entrepreneurial pursuit with. If it's a current, ongoing relationship. Owning property with someone else, even if it's in the form of a corporation, does not necessarily make you business associates. That's CEO 98-9. You're just belonging to the Rotary Club and somebody in there, has a business that's coming before the county. That doesn't make them a business associate, okay? Things have to be special. The law does not apply to things that might result in gain or loss to you. The gain or loss has to be special. And now, because the law was amended during this last legislative session, it requires that there be an economic benefit or harm to you, your relative, your business associate. There are some factors that must be considered by definition now, and this is frankly the way we've really interpreted the law for a number of years. But we look at the size of the class that's affected by the vote, the nature of the interests that are involved, the degree to which the interests of all the members of that affected group are affected by the measure, and the degree to which you, your relative, your business associate, or your employer receives a greater benefit or harm compared to the members of the class. If there's a lot of uncertainty at the time of the vote as to whether or not there'd be any special private gain or loss to you or your relative or your business associate, the commission has to look at whether or not the gain or loss would be too remote and speculative. So you can see it's really highly dependent upon the specific measure. First thing you got to do is look at your agenda and see who's on there, right? Who's on there? Do I know them? Are they a relative? Is it a business associate? What is the measure that we're dealing with? And how does it affect me, the official? How does it affect my relative? And then, is that effect going to be special or not? That's usually where you're going to ask the question of your county attorney or of the commission, and we're happy to help you with that. The further in advance you can ask the question, probably the better the advice you're going to get, because we don't want to make you abstain from a vote that you would actually be able to vote on. But if you call us at 3 o'clock on the afternoon of the vote, we're going to hustle to get you an answer, but unless we can find something on point, our advice may very well be don't vote, because we want to advise you conservatively. So as an elected official, if you have a conflict, you must abstain from the vote. You also have to disclose to everyone there what your conflict is. Please disclose the entirety of your conflict. And then you must file the Form 8B with the person who keeps the minutes, okay? Person who keeps the minute keeps your Form 8B on file. And on that form, you also, in writing, disclose for the record what your conflict is, okay? Post-employment, what happens after you leave public office? What can you do? Besides giggle when you watch the county commission meetings after you're home and you don't have to be there all night long, right? You can do anything you want, except you can't represent somebody for compensation before the county commission for a period of 2 years. The law actually says former government body or agency. The former government body for a county commissioner, an agency is going to be the commission, the chief administrative officer, or employee of the county, and their immediate support staff. Representation is very broad. It's going to be actual physical attendance on behalf of a client, even if you don't speak. It's representation. Phone calls, emails, texts, letters, all of the traditional all of the traditional stuff you would think about. Those things are prohibited for 2 years. You could work for an entity that still appeared before the county commission or had dealings with the county and those restricted officials. You just wouldn't be able to be the person making that contact. And that's just for 2 years as an elected official. We have a good opinion on that, CEO 06-22. All of the opinions I've cited to you today are available on our website. I'm going to very quickly run through complaints. I'm going to give you the 2-minute gist. People cannot file complaints anonymously. It has to be on our complaint form. They're confidential and exempt from public records law, meaning our office will not confirm or deny the complaint's existence until it reaches a stage in our proceedings where it becomes public. You can waive confidentiality in writing with our office if you wish. If you do that, everything's open from that point forward, okay? We do not control your freedom of speech or the freedom of speech of the person who filed the complaint against you. So if it suddenly winds up in the press, it's not the Commission on Ethics. It might be the person who complained against you. It could have even been somebody that you told about the complaint. The Commission cannot initiate its own complaint proceedings, but because of change in the recent law, we can now accept referrals. Referrals can come from the governor, so it can filter up through the IG's offices, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, a state attorney, or a U.S. attorney. They can now send us things on referral. If 6 members of our commission agrees that it's sufficient for investigation, we can get after it. So we no longer, this year we're not asking for self-initiation. We're waiting to see how these referrals work out, and that'll be interesting to see. Once we get a referral, it goes through the same process as regular complaints. You'll be notified that the complaint's been filed against you. It comes by certified mail. You have opportunity to provide responses in writing. If you're investigated, you'll have a chance to be interviewed by our investigator, provide all the documentation you think would be helpful to you, get people who you believe have information relative to the case, give their information to our investigators. You get to appear before our commission. You're provided with the investigative report. You're provided with the recommendation of our prosecutor. I think Herb said he recommends people get an attorney. That is up to you. Certainly, if you get past the probable cause stage, if probable cause is found and you're considering going to a hearing, you definitely would want one. It's confidential until the commission dismisses without investigation as legally insufficient or until that probable cause hearing is held. Regardless of what we say, probable cause or no probable cause, the complaint becomes public record at that time and remains public record for the remainder. I think Herb also mentioned costs and fees. Under the commission's laws, if you are cleared in a complaint proceeding and you have attorney costs and fees, you can choose to file a petition to recover your costs and attorney's fees. The burden would be on you. You have to show that the complaint was filed with malicious intent and that the complainant had knowledge or had a reckless disregard for the allegations that were made in that complaint. It's a pretty high standard, but we have seen more and more petitions for attorney's fees and more of them be granted. If the commission receives a petition that is sufficient to state a claim, it goes to the Division of Administrative Hearings, which will make a ruling as to whether or not fees should be awarded, and if so, in what amount. That then goes back to the commission, the order gets entered, and it's enforceable through the courts. All right, for more information, you have our website there. Remember, we have that training tab with all kinds of information on training. You can look up all of our opinions. You can find out how to contact the commission and question us or harass us about anything that you would like. We stand there to answer any questions you have and accept any feedback that you might have. And I know it's been a very long week for you all, and I appreciate your attention this morning.